Hello everybody, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is about the Dynamics 365 Account Reconciliation Agent. My name is Severin Bock, and I will be your moderator today. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Brian King, Principal Product Manager, Brad Ivan, Principal Software Engineer, Satya Teki, Senior Fast Track Architect, and Saurabh Bhati, Senior Fast Track Architect. So, Dynamics 365 Account Reconciliation Agent is a new capability we have available in our application. With this agenda, we'd like to introduce you to the subject. We would love to share what is our intention behind, what is our vision ahead. We will talk about the setup and installation, and then Brian will give us a demo on how it looks and how it feels in the solution. We talk about the key takeaways, timeline and roadmap. At the end, we follow up on the monetization, results, and Q&A at the end. And with that, let's get started. Before we go to this specific feature, I would like to highlight where we are within the end-to-end process experience. So the account reconciliation agent is focusing on the record-to-report sub-process. This is a process which should sit at every organization who's live with Dynamics 365 Finance or other ERP services. And within the record-to-report sub-process, we have a task to close financial periods. This is happening monthly, yearly, and within that period close activities, there's a subset of tasks which is about reconciling the ledger and the subledger. Because at the end, we need to make sure that it is in balance. If it's not in balance, we have definitely a problem, and that problem needs to be addressed. And this is exactly where we are shipping value with the account reconciliation agent. So today we talk about reconciling ledger and subledger inside Dynamics 365 Finance. So today, the finance managers are working on this with a very, very time-consuming and manual work to reconcile the ledgers. It's an ever-prone and very stressful activity, and it's limited strategic focus. This is what we like to turn around. We like to avoid that our finance accountants, finance managers are spending time, manual time, doing reconciliation work. We really like to save time to focus on more meaningful strategic work instead of repeating manual activities over and over again. That is the vision we have. How we achieve this? We bring Dynamics 365 Finance Account Reconciliation into the application. With that, we are transforming finance with automations for continuous accounting closing. That means we give you a dashboard which gives us a view on what is the current reconciliation status on the module supported. Once we have exceptions, these exceptions can be driven by an agent to understand what are the actions I should take to mitigate these exceptions. So it's a play between a workspace we bring and an agent we are putting on top. And most of this will give us that experience to automate subledger reconciliation and drive innovation with by a proper exception management process. We are getting these flags where we have these discrepancies available. We like to learn and drive adoption to be better on the next iteration. It gives us real-time financial insights to the current status on where we have these differences between the ledgers. And with that, we are in an operational efficiency mode, so that we are not investing manual time, as mentioned, very regular, that we are really utilizing modern technologies to avoid manual interactions. So let's take a look how this looks like today without the account reconciliation agent, which is on the top of the presentation, right? As mentioned, it is very manual, right? We are running lengthy SAS reports, then we need to find these discrepancies. A lot of us are exporting this data into an Excel, and then we do research on the transactions of the accounts to understand why that's not in balance. And we do all acknowledge that in the ideal world, there should be no difference, because in the system, you can go and flag main accounts to be not to be posted manual, and then we have left and right always the same posting. But there are a lot of cases where this flag is not properly configured, or there is a reason why it cannot be configured. So these exceptions are happening, right? So this research is happening in an excellent, and they collaborate with stakeholders to make adjustments. Then after it's done, we need to rerun these reconciliation reports. So it's a very lengthy process. So, and with the account reconciliation agent, you see in the bottom of the presentation, we have, Copilot agent capabilities in combination of user interaction. So the agent should really constantly monitor the voter transactions. It needs to flag, and it will flag these discrepancies. So we can get notified, that we can notify this finance team proactively, and then we can propose decisions and alternatives what to do to mitigate that. So and then we take action and tracking evidence of these actions, that we have an audit trail on what has been done by the agent or has been suggested. And then the user is next to this to oversee, to control, to govern that process. So we're defining these notifications, right? We do review, accept the proposals, or we are rejecting. And this is the process we like to see in future. And that is with help of the account reconciliation agent. Another view to this is when we do compare the application versions, 10.043 and pure versus what's coming within 10.4.4 and future. So on the left-hand side, you see there is this, as we probably all know, it's very time-consuming. We have this reactive report we need to go run, right? Exception raised, the exceptions being researched in Excel, right? We don't sit within F&O, right? There's really no solution on when an exception is there. It's really about the accountant, the finance accountant, who needs to know what to do, right? And then with 10.044 in future, because that's the version where the account reconciliation workspace and agents available, we see time savings available every month. Every time we do see, ledgers, sub-ledgers are not in balance. We are having this productive immersive workspace, as mentioned. We will see this in the demo, right? The user remains in F&O where data resides, so there's no need to jump between applications like Dynamics 5 versus Excel. Right? We get recommendations proactively in what to do, and we have a history and log about all the steps taken by an automation, user, and agent. So this is what we're thinking about. What is happening with this application version being available. And with that, I will hand over to Satya.
Thanks, Severin. Before we start, so this is first we need to know what are the reasons for the ledger to sub-ledger discrepancies and why we had to come up with this agent. So based on what we have researched, so there are several reasons. So the first reason is control accounts are not restricted for manual postings. So the accounts which should be part of the posting profiles are control accounts, and they should be restricted for manual postings. But we have seen in instances where the control accounts are not restricted, and we end up posting only in the ledger and not in the sub-ledger. And the other reason that we've seen is the same control account is assigned to multiple posting profiles. This example is where an account which is part of the vendor posting profile is associated with also an inventory posting profile. And we have seen the account being used at both the places, and which can lead to incorrect or overlapping postings. The other reason is the changes made to the posting profile groups or control accounts, where for the vendor posting profile or customer posting profile, there are changes that are made after a certain posting has been done in the sub-ledger and not moved to the general ledger, which can result in inconsistencies if not properly synchronized. The other reason here is reversals or adjustments not reflected in the sub-ledger, where I go ahead and reverse a transaction only in the general ledger or adjust a transaction in the general ledger, but not post to the sub-ledger. So these are certain reasons where we see a difference between the ledger to the sub-ledger. Okay. So what the agent or the account reconciliation agent currently offers is three exception types, a handling of three exception types. The first one being in subledger, not in subledger, not in ledger. So a voucher which is currently in the subledger but not yet posted to the ledger. This can happen due to posting profile changes. And the actions that we provide currently on the workspace related to the agent is to create journal entry, link transactions, or accept without change. The second exception type is in ledger and not in subledger. And this happens when the subledger logic fails to post. And the actions that we recommend here is to create a journal entry, a reverse, or link transactions, or accept without change. The third exception type is voucher amount mismatches. So this happens where there is a difference between the ledger and the subledger with respect to the amount. And the actions that you can do here is create a journal entry for the difference, or accept without change, or reverse. And currently in the recent release, what the exception type that the agent supports is the third exception type, that is the voucher amount mismatch. So the agent here requires the following licenses, that these D365 or Power Automate Premium, and the Copilot Studio Message Capacity or Pay As You Go license. And you need to be at least on 10.0.44. That's a public preview for this agent. So a couple of configurations here that come along with 10.44, which are related to the agent, is now you do have this feature, which is the account reconciliation agent, and that is enabled by default on 10.44. And you also have process automation jobs, which gets enabled. So this runs in the background, processes all the records for a certain period, and you can set up the frequency of the process automation batch job. Currently, it is set up at 6 hours, and you can set it up for whatever time you would need the records to be processed. And the other configuration on the workspace is the accounts. So for our production preview, we do have option to set up which accounts you want to be considered for the reconciliation for the 4 ledgers, that is the accounts payable, accounts receivable, bank, and tax. You have an option currently to add or remove an account that you want to be part of the reconciliation. So with that, I'm handing over to Brian for the demo.
Right. So I am showing finance and operations. I'm showing 10.0.44. And what you're seeing right here is the new immersive homepage. I wanted to start here because we can see some of the agent details in this particular homepage. So at the top right, you'll see agent activity, and you'll see agent activity for the current period. So you'll see account reconciliation and the number of suggestions we've offered in this period. Then we also have links to the agent activity and the agent itself that we can get to from that card. Or we can also go through the menu option, go to agents, and get to the agents or the agent activity to see that detail. So I'm going to click on agents here, which would be the same as clicking on view agents in that card. And that's going to be where we can turn the agent on. So you'll still have to meet the prerequisites that Satya talked about as far as making sure that you have Dataverse and Copilot Studio set up and all those pieces. When you turn on the agent, you'll come in here and you'll see it in the library and you'll turn it on and you'll get this card here that will say, basically, suggest mitigation actions for open exceptions that occurred on or after a specific date. So what this is allowing you to do is to say, for instance, I've been going through the old method using the SSRS reports and I've reconciled through a certain point. And maybe for me, that was April 30th of 2025. I can tell the agent, only look at transactions on 5/1 or later. So only new stuff. Don't go through and process transactions in April, March, February, anything older. I only want to look at new things, so that's what we'll process. So when you turn the agent on, you'll set the start date. That will be the date that the agent will start evaluating the exceptions for recommended actions. So you'll see that particular piece of information in the agent panel. And then for the agent activity, I'll go ahead and open that up here as well. What you'll see is a list of agent actions. So for our account reconciliation agent, you'll see some actions that are all here that'll be msdine_account reconciliation agent. And you might see these as scheduled or completed, just kind of depending on where they're at in the process. But that's how you'll know kind of the agent is running and taking actions. If I go back to that immersive homepage, we also have links to workspaces. So as part of the work here, we added a workspace, and that workspace is called account reconciliation. And that's what a lot of the content we've covered prior to this today has focused on. Now, this workspace isn't the agent, so don't confuse the two. It's complementary work, as this workspace is going to bring up exceptions, and then those exceptions get evaluated by the agent. So we need those exceptions for the agent to run. I'm going to change my view here because I want to look at May rather than June. And then we'll see in here, I have some exceptions in accounts receivable and tax. And then on the top right corner, I'll see that under the account reconciliation agent card, I have 3 suggestions offered for this period. So of the exceptions that I have out here, so 9 in total, 3 of those have agent recommendations against them. So we can get to that detail either by clicking on mitigate exceptions, or I can click on the badge here in the grid. So if I wanted to have a filtered list by accounts receivable, I can click here where it says 4 exceptions on this badge, and that will take me into a filtered list of those exceptions. So now I only see those exceptions that were accounts receivable. This first exception, so that I have highlighted here that ends in 209, it's a voucher amount mismatch exception type. So when Satya was presenting earlier, he mentioned different exception types. So you have exception types that are voucher amount mismatch, in ledger, not in subledger, not in ledger, and you'll see some other ones like pending general ledger posting. So you'll see some of those get processed as we go along. In this case, what I want to call out is we have the detail here. So this is part of the workspace that shows the subledger, so accounts receivable, and then the ledger piece. So there's a difference in the amount. And we can see that in this case, in this card at the top with the little sparkle here, that says suggested action. So this is the agent recommendation that we see in that card. So where it says suggested action preview, that is our recommended action from the agent. So in this card, the agent is telling us there's a difference between the subledger and ledger value, and that difference is 70 cents in US dollars. It's not within any limit that we've got set. So as a starting point, we work off of the penny difference settings that you have. So in this case, we're recommending an action to get this back into a reconciled state or a matching state of creating a journal entry. So there's a highlighted action here, create journal entry, so you can see it as a blue button. There are other actions that are listed under the other actions tab where I could go to the form to reverse the transaction. I could go to a form where I can link subledger and ledger transactions together, or I can say 70 cents is close enough, accept without change, basically mark that exception as addressed and move on. So those are actions that are taken. But what the agent is doing in this case is recommending the action of creating a journal entry, which will take me to the journal entry form where I can take that action. When I do so, it'll write an activity over to the right-hand side. So here we can see we've got a posted adjustment as the recommended action. If I take the action, we'll get more detail written here. For an exception where maybe the agent hasn't run as of yet, we can look at a different transaction and see what that looks like. So in this case, for number 210, we have an exception, but in this case, we don't have that agent card here in this case. So in this case, we have recommended actions not presented to the user. We just have the options that were in like the other actions that we saw for the other exception. So we can reverse this transaction, we can create the journal entry, we can accept without change, but you don't see that action highlighted in blue with the summary when the agent hasn't run against that particular transaction. So that's a little bit about the account reconciliation agent in the product. I'll pass it over to Saurabh and we'll talk a little bit about some of the other pieces of the agent here.
Thank you, Brian, for wonderful demo. So yeah, let's look at some of the key takeaways for the account reconciliation agents. First, it offers the adaptive experience, which means the system learns from users' behavior to tailor the workflows. The second one is the agent is continuous learning and improving the accuracy and reducing the manual efforts over the period of time. The third one, and the most important one, is the agent activity tracking, which ensures that every action is logged, supporting transparency and audit readiness, which is very critical for the finance processes. As shown here in this picture, the interface provides the detailed visibility into agents' actions, helping teams to stay compliant and in control. And this feature makes reconciliation more smarter and faster. Now, another key takeaway from this is the understanding how it helps us during the implementation and after the go live. So let's look at how the account reconciliation supports both the implementation and the live operation phase in Dynamics 365 Finance. During the implementation, it enables the early detection of discrepancies during the testing, resolution through the proper configuration aligned with the Dynamics 365 accounting rules for the organizations, and a strong foundation built on best practices. And once you go live with the Dynamics 365 in the live operation, it helps you to correct discrepancy from the suboptimal setups, which Satya was talking about, offers proactive guidance to prevent future issues, and reduce the manual correction and boost the data reliability. Together, these capabilities ensure smoother deployment and more stable financial operations. So today, the reconciliation is manual and time-consuming, error-prone and stressful, and it limits our ability to focus on strategic planning, which we started as a problem statement in the beginning. But with the account reconciliation agent, the future looks very different. The reconciliation becomes continuous, not periodic. The issues are identified in real time, not after the fact. We can close books faster and improve agility, and team can shift the focus from fixing errors to forward-looking planning. Now, this shift isn't just about automation. It's about transforming finance into proactive, insight-driven function. The agent becomes a digital teammate, helping us move from reactive cleanup to a strategic leadership. With this now, I hand over to Brian again to talk about the roadmap and the plan for the account reconciliation agent.
Yeah, so as far as timeline and roadmap, so a little bit of history here. With the 10.0.43 release, we released a small private preview build. We're not taking any additional customers in that private preview, and we've actually closed that particular preview window as we've moved into 10.0.44. So in 10.0.44, we're in what's called production-ready public preview. So that differs from public preview in other cases in the sense that you can use this in a production environment where a typical public preview you cannot use in production environments. So what that means is the link that we'll show later on in a slide that Severin will cover, as far as the setup and configuration and all of those pieces are available to you in 10.0.44 if you have an environment on that build. So that could be a sandbox environment if you want to try it there. It also applies to production environments. As we move forward and progress towards what we'll call our generally available or release build, we're looking at 10.0.46 at this point, which would be later on in 2025 here. So we have some features that we want to add, which we cover on the next slide, and I can dive into some of the details behind those things. So as you saw, we cover 4 modules today. Those modules are accounts receivable, accounts payable, tax, and bank. And that's the subledger to ledger as far as reconciliation process. We want to add additional module support for areas such as fixed assets, project, inventory, and intercompany. So you'll see some of those things coming through as we progress towards GA and maybe even after GA. In addition, we want to add additional support for other exception types. So the exception type that I showed in the demonstration today was voucher amount mismatch. We also have scenarios for exceptions for in subledger and not in ledger, and in ledger and not in subledger. And we want to have recommendations from the agent for those particular exception types. As part of that, we need to improve the matching and linking scenarios. So essentially doing what we're terming as intelligent matching to come up with what those transactions are, if maybe they exist on both sides that maybe weren't found with the correct linkage detail to get a good link. So coming up with an approach for that. And then automation of actions. So when create journal entry is recommended, having that create and automatically post the journal entry, and then having the ability for the user to stop that in the middle if they want to review that before it posts automatically, similar to like a workflow. Smart voucher linking. So as we kind of mentioned in the prior bullet, think of this as how do we identify what should really be matched between the ledger and the subledger if some of the detail is a little bit different. What is that confidence level of what is good enough there? So we'll be working on solutions for that. And then voucher reversal. So how do we trigger that reversal and then making sure that we handle those properly and get that cleared out along with the exceptions. So you'll see some of those things as we go forward and move through the product lifecycle for the account reconciliation agent. I'll pass it over to Severin and he'll dive into some of the details around monetization for the agent.
So as mentioned, the prerequisites. So the agent itself does not need any additional subscription. So you only need one agent identity you need to configure, and this agent identity is on them, working. So you need to have one, at least, only one user license you assign up to this agent identity, and that agent identity could be used for many agents, right? You're using within the Dynamics 365 portfolio. So and then this agent is available and can be utilized. And by the way, the workspace itself is part of the normal, service you're using. So when you're, operating within Dynamics 365 Finance, you have access to this workspace automatically. So that is very straightforward. So when it comes to the agent, it's the agent, right, where we are running agentic actions. Here's where we, have a monetization, where we are talking about Microsoft Copilot Studio and the message consumption. So this is a pattern which is not only relevant for the Dynamics 365 account reconciliation agent. This is the same for all, first-party agents within Dynamics 365, or agents you go and build on your own, which are getting deployed and published within MCS. So it's a framework we are having here in the center. So MCS stands for Microsoft Copilot Studio. So that is the center of all the agent work we do. So, and then, when the agent is getting used by the end users, and, keep in mind that we're talking about an exception, and only for exceptions, we are triggering the agent to be used in this case, right? We're using messages, right? So these messages needs to be available on the tenant. And there are two options. You can go and take a look to the message packs. This is a tenant-wide message pack, which contains, 25,000 messages per month. And then there's a price tag behind. Next to the prepaid messages, you can go with an pay-as-you-go pattern. So that is, is giving you $1 per message. And then you can see that these the messages getting consumed by the agents when you have done the proper configuration within PPAC. So then, you're well set, and you have then the best possibility to run these actions. So and how many messages are getting consumed? So this is a very good table I like a lot, which gives you an idea about, okay, what specific, types of agent and prompts can be, executed within MCS. And it gives you a table structure. So you do see in this case, and we mark this in with a black frame, when our agent is doing its job. So it's taking a look to the exception. It's analyzing what it is and suggesting you to do something, or in future to go and it is doing something. So that will consume 5 messages. So that means if you have a ledger and within month and closing, and you're facing 10 exceptions, and these 10 exceptions will be investigated by the agent, right? We're doing 10 by 5, and that is then the amount of exceptions, the amount of messages, we are consuming from the MCS backend. So this is where you can do the math. Moving forward, right, we might have more agentic actions available, or more features which are consuming different type of rates, but we'll make sure that we have their proper documentation available that you have clarity on, okay, what are the potential run costs based on my data composition, based on my industry, based on my exceptions I know, and then you have a good understanding how much it will be per month, per year. All right, and with that, we have here resources for you available. So for the account reconciliation agent itself, so which is in the production value preview, we have a link for the agent management form in the ERP service. We give you a link to the in general how to enable Copilot capabilities within F&O apps. So because there's much more besides this agent, there's a lot of other capabilities we have shipped. And we are shipping. So, and then there's a link for the billing rates and management. And then there's a link as well to the Viva Engage group. So if you like to stay tuned, you like to stay informed, you like to go, be part of that community, that's a group you are, very much invited to join. And that wraps up the presentation for today. And we have time for Q&A. So I've seen already there are a couple of questions which has been raised, and I've published a few of these. Brian, while I'm reading this, is there anything you like to call out loud? Anything which is top of mind based on the questions you have seen so far?
Sure, just a couple. So there was a question about prereqs, and I know you just covered a slide that had some of the documentation links, but there's a link in one of the responses to the question too. So it'll take you right to our docs article. So if you go to learn.microsoft.com, you can find out an article that's titled Set Up and Configure the Account Reconciliation Agent there. And that has the prerequisites listed out as well. But there's a link, if you go to that response, you can grab that. So as an attendee, you can find that. There was a question on how do I know why I had a problem, right? Like, why did I end up with an exception? So the agent won't show necessarily the why, but it's part of the workspace and the detail and the activity there. We do have on the panel, you'll have the subledger and the ledger side, and they'll have links that you can drill back to, right? What we found previously is that when people are using the SSRS report to do reconciliation, they would end up exporting a bunch of data to Excel, going outside of Dynamics 365 Finance to try to find the solution and find the problem. The goal here is to try to keep users in the system so they don't have to go hunt and peck to find this information. So as we go through and expand too, we would like to add some things to the agent to check the configuration of the customer, right? Like maybe you have a scenario where, hey, we've seen problems with this. You may want to review this setting. So you might see us add that over time as well. And I guess along with that, I would just maybe even plug that the workspace or even the agent, but maybe more so the workspace might be valuable too. If you're a customer that's starting to go live or a partner working with a customer that's about to go live, you could use the workspace in UAT to see, potential exceptions that are going to come up. So rather than going through operating and posting a bunch of transactions and finding a setup problem, you might be able to detect that setup problem by running the workspace in Sandbox or in UAT prior to go live. So those are a few that I would kind of call out.
Yeah, Brian, thank you. There's another question on the sub-ledgers that would be working for. So currently we support the 4 of them. That's the account payable, account receivable, bank, and tax. Do you want to talk about the others?
Yeah, so in the roadmap slide, we talked a little bit about this. So we'd like to add functionality to have the same ability for fixed assets, inventory, intercompany, and project transactions.
Perfect. And I think, looking into the customer conversation ahead so far and talking to partners, right, this gives us a very good opportunity to get started with agentic work on Dynamics 365 Finance. So it's helping, manual processes to go faster. But on the other hand, it's not really, directly changing a lot of, business processes which are, used within the value chain of the customers. So we can use this one here very well to get started with agentic work. We can take a look how it works. We can use the framework and really can ship value quite quickly to our finance accountants who are, in case you have these scenarios. But, it's an exception handling agent. in case you have these scenarios where you can really save a lot of manual time you're spending today with these SAS reports and, not knowing what to do. So this is very, very important feature for us. So, Brian, I don't see anything else incoming on the questions. So we can give it maybe 2 or 3 additional minutes, but then we can go and close this tech talk here. So if you have any question around, please feel free to drop the question in the Q&A panel, and then take a look to this directly, and then we find an answer to this. Otherwise, you can always reach out right via the Viva Engage group we shared. We can connect with us offline in case you like to talk one-on-one. We are here for you to help. We are here, for you to help you adopt the agent, and as well listen to your feedback. What needs to be done in addition. Where we need to shape and make that better. Let us know your feedback. We are here to work with you together with our customers and partners to make this agent to be a very valuable tooling. All right, Ryan, any last comment you have?
I don't think so. No. So thanks everyone for attending today. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining the session. Please stay tuned. There's more information being shared on this specific agent. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye.